Hey guys, it's Miss Carlton. I hope you're having a great day so far. So today's focus is on solving one-step equations. And recall from your notes that the goal of solving an equation is to isolate the variable, which simply means that we're going to solve for the variable, and we do that by using inverse or opposite operations. So addition and subtraction are inverse operations, and multiplication and division are inverse operations. And inverse operations just simply means that they're going to cancel each other out. So the first equation we're solving for is negative 15 plus n equals negative 9. Our goal is to solve for what the variable is equal to. So I'm trying to solve for what n is equal to. Now I'm going to draw a line here just to remind you that whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to come over and do to the other side of the equation. So a good example of this would be a seesaw. So if somebody sat on one end of the seesaw, but nobody sat on the other end, the seesaw would be unbalanced and then it wouldn't work correctly. That one person would be sitting on the ground while the other side of the seesaw was up. The example in your notes was talking about weights and how if you put a bunch of weight on one side of a bar, then you would have to put the same amount of weight on the other side, otherwise you wouldn't be able to lift it correctly. So just remember to keep your equations balanced, and we do that by whatever we do to one side of the equation, we come over and do to the other side of the equation. All right, so we said the goal was to get n by itself here. And that means that I have to get rid of that negative 15. So the inverse of negative 15, or the opposite, would be positive 15. So I'm simply going to add 15 here. All right, now I'm going to come over to the other side of this line, and I'm also going to add 15. So a negative 15 and a positive 15, they're going to cancel each other out. And I'm just going to be left with the n here on the left side. So I'm going to say n equals, now I have negative 9 and positive 15. So my signs are different, which means I'm going to subtract. So 15 take away 9 gives me 6. And I take the sign of the bigger number. 15 is bigger than 9, so it's going to be positive 6. Now, once you get your answer, you can plug it back in for the variable and see if it is correct. So our original equation said negative 15 plus n equals negative 9. And if you were going to plug back in to check this, you would say negative 15 plus, and I'm going to plug the 6 in for n, equals negative 9. Now, think back to your integer rules. So if I box these in, my signs are different, so I subtract. 15 take away 6 is going to give me 9. And I take the sign of the bigger number. 15 is bigger than 6, so I'm going to take the negative sign. And negative 9 is equal to negative 9. If you get the same thing on both sides when you plug it back in, that means that the answer for n is correct. If you were to get a different answer on both sides, it means that something is wrong with your equation and you probably didn't solve it correctly. Our next equation is m plus 4 equals negative 12. So I'm going to go ahead and circle the m just so you can recognize that's what we're solving for. And I'm going to draw my line here so we remember to do the same thing on both sides. So looking at the left side, m plus 4. So that positive 4 is preventing m from being by itself. So the opposite of a positive 4 is a negative 4. And I'm going to come over to this side and also put a negative 4 or a minus 4, same thing. So a positive 4 and a negative 4 are going to cancel each other out, and I'm just left with m equals negative 12 and negative 4, my signs are the same, so I'm going to add and keep. So negative 12 and negative 4 is going to give me negative 16. All right, let's plug this back in so we can check to make sure our answer is correct. So I'm going to plug negative 16 in for m, so negative 16 plus 4 equals negative 12. All right, I'm going to box in my two numbers, so negative 16 and positive 4. My signs are different. I'm going to subtract and take the sign of the bigger number. So 16 minus 4 is 12. 16 is bigger than 4, so I'm going to take the negative sign. So negative 12 is equal to negative 12. Again, we get the same thing on both sides, which means our equation is balanced or our equation is correct. All right, so the next equation we have is 14y equals negative 56, and we're solving for y here. So remember that a number directly next to a variable with nothing between it means multiplication. So this is saying 14 times some number equals negative 56. So to cancel out that multiplication, we're going to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 14. And 14 divided by 14 is going to cancel out. It gives me 1. So 1y equals, and negative 56 divided by 14 is going to give me 4. And we have a negative divided by a positive, which gives us a negative. So y equals negative 4. All right, so we can plug in and check our solution now. So I'm going to say 14, and I'm going to plug in the negative 4. So times negative 4 equals negative 56. So a positive times a negative is a negative. 14 times 4 is 56. So negative 56 equals negative 56. All right, so the next equation we have is negative 6 equals x over 8. I'm going to write this a little bit differently just so it makes it a little bit easier to show you the math as we're going along. All right, so I have the same equation. So negative 6 equals x over 8. I just wrote the fraction different. Remember that a fraction also means division. So this is saying some number divided by positive 8 is going to give us negative 6. So we're solving for the x here. And I just told you that we're dividing some number by 8. So the opposite of dividing a number by 8 would be to multiply the number by 8. I like to use parentheses for multiplication now instead of the x because as you can see, we already have the variable x, and if I use the x for multiplying, it might make our work a little bit more confusing. So I'm going to put parentheses around this fraction, and I'm going to multiply it by 8. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to multiply by 8. Now, think back to fractions. So if I had x over 8, and I was multiplying this by 8, this would be like 8 over 1. And I'm going to multiply straight across. So 1x times 8 is going to give us 8x. And 8 times 1 is going to give us 8. And 8 divided by 8 is going to cancel out. It just gives me 1x. So this is going to cancel out here. And I'm just going to be left with x is equal to, and a positive 8 times a negative 6 is going to give us negative 48. So if I plug back in here to check my solution, I would say negative 6 equals negative 48 over 8. Negative 48 divided by a positive 8 gives me negative 6, so negative 6 equals negative 6. Pause the video, write these in your notebook, solve them, and then press play to see if you get the correct answers. If you do not get the correct answers, try to figure out what you did wrong or come see me for additional help.